Well, you could just cross out. It is no longer.
Right.
So I would just cross off the way that that's the reality. So that would just come.
If we break one of these little guys, that's all right.
Good.
Come on.
Roger that.
Gotta be
a little
really
freaking out of
delicate
cutting
there.
demo right there.
Yeah, I'm just light pressure with my thumbs. And I shake it, level it off. Do a little tamp like that. That's perfect. We'll water all
Wait,
these
your
guys.
soil's above the pot height.
It's going to change.
Should be a little bit. Because when we water, it's all going to
It'll all
compact.
settle in a little bit. These cuttings we did last fall. They're for Barone Ranch for this creek restoration. 20,000 plants or something like that?
12,000.
12,000 plants. 12,000 plants. Willow right along the edge of the creek, and then it goes into blackberry and rose, and then some sycamores and some oaks. And like I said this morning, it's mitigation for red-legged frogs, which were removed from Tahigas Creek, the one canyon over, where all our trash goes. And in order to squeeze three more years worth of trash in, they took the creek, eliminated it, put a pipe, relocated the frogs over to the next canyon over, which the county owns. And in order to do that, they had to mitigate the consequences of ruining the other creek by fixing the creek, the Barone Ranch Creek. It'll be a 5-year project. This is just phase 1. They're also removing Arizona crossings, those cement dips that go across creeks that steelhead can't get through. They're removing those, and they're removing avocado trees. They're putting a 200-foot wide buffer on both sides of the creek. Excuse me, somebody's probably lost it, not you. Anyway, welcome to the airport nursery. This nursery we built in about 2003 maybe for a huge mitigation project. It was about 200,000 plants. It looks very empty now because we just moved out, what, 20,000?
We moved out about 14,000.
14,000 plants. So this was full about a month ago. That's what we were talking this morning. The contractor did a pretty poor job with the install. Anytime you have a project that's bigger than about 50,000 plants and it's going to last more than 3 or 4 years, it's a really good idea to build an on-site nursery. It saves in a lot of transportation costs. Make sure your genetics are good. In other words, all the seed just came from the other side of the fence where the slough is. It's just a wise idea. The nurseries can be temporary structures, so when this project finishes, we can just pick this nursery up, put it at the next big project site. They're fairly easy to move. Santa Cruz Island, we have a nursery solely for the island because we don't want to mess with the genetics. We don't want to grow plants here and then ship them out there on boats and risk bringing disease out or the wrong genetic or weeds or something like that. So any huge project, you want to have a separate on-site temporary nursery. This will probably end up being here forever because there's always going to be constant mitigation for the airport. We're going to do a whole case study in the airport, so I'm not going to really go into that right now, but we've done about 45 acres out here, and I'll go over the whole thing and the management plan and how that was developed and all that. This project has evolved over the last 40 years, something like that. Starting maybe 50 years, starting in the 60s. Was the beginning of the planning process for this, but I'll talk about that all later. So what we're going to do today is a couple different types of plant propagation. Mainly, we try to grow most of our plants from seed so that we continue to get the evolution of the genes. But seed is the only sexual form of reproduction, so you get a new genotype every time a flower gets pollinated and you get new seed. so you're always increasing the biodiversity of the species. But sometimes, for sake of time and speed, in nursery we also do things from cuttings. Just take a piece of material and stick it in some perlite, or in this case we just used sort of a soil mix, and then they root and then you transplant it. This is an asexual form of reproduction, plant propagation. It's a clone of the plant, so there's no change in genetics. This plant here is exactly the same as the plant that we snipped the cutting on. We also do division, like these plants that are in the tubs, where we'll just take a piece of the plant, take the plant and cut it in half, or cut it in thirds. So this testiculus, for example, we grew it from seed originally, and now we just pull this out of the pot and slice it and make two for one kind of deal. So we'll do some of that. So seeds, cuttings, divisions. Cutting and division are asexual, without sex, they're clones. There's another really neat form of reproduction called air layering, which we don't do
Too much.
very often. And we also do a thing called tip layering, where the shoots of the thing come out of the ground or out of the pot, and then you take the stem and you layer it down in the ground and peg it down. It'll root at the node. We do that with blackberry, Creek clematis, and some of these other viney type plants. Okay, so seed. Probably 80 or 90% of our stuff is grown from seed. We collect all our own seed. Well, 99% of the time. Once in a while, some other contractor will get seed to us to grow, like coho, I think. We didn't collect the coho seed, did we?
Or Vandenberg, and that was an access issue.
Right. We didn't have the top secret security clearance to get in there. But we try to get it in the contract that we do the seed collecting. And then up at the ranch we have a seed lab where we process the seed, separate some of the chaff out, make sure there's no insects in it so doesn't get eaten, and then they get put in those plastic tubs, which you'll see, in paper bags so they'll breathe. You never want to store seed in plastic, because the seed won't breathe and it'll suffocate the seed, and it'll also probably mildew too because there's moisture in the seed. So you store seed in paper bags instead of plastic, and then we put them in those tubs to keep mice from getting to them. Seed stays viable for 1 to 5 years. Sometimes some things might stay viable for 150 years till there's a fire, but in general, you need to use the seed up in 2 or 3 years. You get the best germination in year 1, and then it goes down after that.
There's a huge difference between the seed that you put on your shelf, and the seed bank out in the wild. And that's the difference, in viability. Stuff that you put on you collect and save, is only going to last a short time.
Yeah. If it drops into the ground and it sits in the soil and gets covered with mulch, it could sit there for many years before the right conditions to germinate. But when you collect it and store it, it starts to lose its viability. There's 2 really good times a year to sow native plant seed. One is late August, September, early October. The days are starting to get a little bit shorter, but they're not too short. The seed would normally germinate in about October, November, when the first rains come. Really good time of year to do seeds. And the other one is late January, early February into about mid-March. Any later than mid-March, the days are getting longer, it's getting hotter, the rains are done. Seed doesn't want to germinate very well. It's hard to get stuff to germinate, especially, midsummer, don't even bother. Right? We sowed a bunch of rose seed midsummer because this contract for the Barone Ranch thing came in so late, and by the time we signed it, it was 6 months late, and so we had to sow it but it didn't germinate until the fall.
Germinate at the same time we planted the stuff in September. Those 2 things germinate at the same time.
So I mean, it just sat there until it was the right time to germinate. So,
This is one of the challenges of restoration is